Welcome to the cabin, everybody. I have a lot of requests, as usual, for cabin videos. I'm apologizing I didn't do very many this past winter. So today is a beautiful spring day. This is the 21st of May. This video probably won't come out until a week from today. This is Saturday. It'll probably come out next Saturday, and I'll be adding other things to it. But I'm going to have lunch here in the cabin, the first lunch where everything is from the garden and from the coop, the quail coop this time. Not eating one of the quails. I'm making an omelet with their eggs. Well, I will bring you over here to the table and we'll do some of the prep work, get ready for cooking lunch. Well, as I said, it's a beautiful day out, but it's not as nice as this thing is showing. It's probably about 23, I think that's what it was when I left the house, but this thing that's now reading 40 degrees is the sensor that's in the hoop house. So where that sensor is located, it is 40 degrees Celsius. I have to water in there every day. I don't think I've had to do that this early in the year before. We're having some nice sunny weather, and it's just now starting to get warm. But it's also been a very dry spring here. We keep getting forecasts of rain, and we get the cloudy weather, but we don't get the rain. So let's have a look at what we're doing here, I guess. I find a knife. I'm going to cook some vegetables, all from the garden. These I've already washed up at the house and cleaned. Those are Egyptian onions, which in the spring make an excellent spring onion. As you can see, they look like one you'd buy in a store almost. I'm going to cook those, some tops and all. And these are Jerusalem artichokes, or sunchokes, if you want to call them. Perhaps the last harvesting of these until fall, because they're starting to sprout and grow again, but I have peeled those already and washed them. So I'll have some Jerusalem artichokes. And I'm only using one saucepan, so these things will be cooked a bit at a time, I guess. I'll add things to them. I wouldn't want to put the asparagus in at the same time as the other things, because I don't like my asparagus cooked up mushy. I just want it barely heated through, really. Changes the color a little bit. I like it a little crisp. I have two varieties of asparagus. The one with the purple top, I don't know what the name of it is, but it's the one that I'm getting the most of, because I only have one plant of this one, which is Mary Washington. A nice green asparagus, and it grows to the loveliest big stalks. I found it at a garden center, one of those leftover things a few years ago. It was already potted up and growing. I wish there'd been more. I've been looking for more ever since. Maybe I'll find some more this summer. But I'll show you what I do to prepare asparagus. Now, I've cut that off as a relatively long one. All I do is hold it up like this and bend until it breaks. This part is tender, and you don't need to do anything to it. This part is still quite tender, but you can peel this part, if I can get it going here, and that will get rid of any of the toughness that might have been involved in it. Don't like this vegetable peeler for obvious reasons. I think it's a right-handed vegetable peeler, and I'm not. But anyway, if you peel off the outer skin on the tougher end of it, just put it in at the same time that I may have to use the paring knife, I guess that's not working. Put it in at the same time that you're doing the other asparagus, it'll all be quite tender. This tougher outer skin removed. I guess that gives you the idea. Thankfully, I only have one or two large stalks this time. I don't have to do that to the rest of it. Takes a bit of time with a knife. Should have brought the different peeler out. I guess that one isn't working too well. Anyway, I will bring you back in a minute or two when I'm starting to prep for my omelet. But I will get the first of the vegetables on and get them started cooking. Well, the first of the vegetables are on, and now I'm going to start preparing my omelet. An omelet au final, the fine herb omelet, and the fine herbs have all come from my garden. These are chives, just called Asian chives when I grew them from seeds a few years ago, and their tops, as you can see, are practically as large as a green onion. They're all starting to bloom in the hoop house now. Maybe they bloomed last year and I just don't remember it, but I'm not seeing any little seedlings coming up anywhere, so I think this might be the first time they've ever bloomed. I think this is the third year for them. Very tasty, like any chive. These might be a bit stronger than the ordinary chive. And along with that, I've brought some things that have been growing under lights at the house. This is curly chervil. Still, well, I don't know, probably safe to put it outside now, but I'll wait a few more days and not risk any cold nights, I guess. And the last night it went down to 9 degrees overnight, so no danger of frost last night anyway. It's coming up to our traditional day of planting out in the gardens in Canada, eastern Canada anyway. I can probably do it much earlier in British Columbia. At the 24th of May, Victoria Day. It was established as a holiday during the reign of Queen Victoria. The 24th was her birthday. There's a story that all of the school children, and I guess they didn't have the internet, I don't know how they got together on the idea, but supposedly the school children all across the country started a little rhyme that they would chant in school. It's the 24th of May, give us a holiday or we'll all run away. Well, it worked. And we still celebrate Queen Victoria's birthday. It's now the day that no matter when the monarch's birthday is, and Queen Elizabeth's birthday is in April, we still celebrate on Victoria Day. That was a little bit of Italian flat leaf parsley, and this is a little sprig of rosemary, and I guess I didn't say anything when I was chopping, but there was also a bit of French thyme. I like the thyme this time of year because it doesn't have any woody stem. The new growth is all nice and soft. So that is the herbs ready for my omelet. Now to get the eggs ready for my omelet. My quail are laying quite well. I don't know if you can see those or not. I'll try to put them someplace where you can. Yes, I guess you can. These are bob white quail eggs. Most quail eggs that you're probably used to seeing are sort of a brownish green background and speckled. Well, those are eggs that are laid by the Coturnix variety, the Japanese Coturnix. And all of the derivatives of the Coturnix, like Texas A&M and all those, they all came from the Japanese breed. The bob white is a wild breed, and it lays a snow white egg. These little things I bought online, and they are designed for cracking quail eggs. You just peel the top off and try not to get too much shell down in the bowl. I think I'm making a mess. No, it even came out without the yolk breaking. Quail eggs are notoriously hard to crack. The size of them, for one thing, but also they have a membrane inside that's very hard to get through, and these little scissors are a big help. Even though I do have to take a spoon afterwards and get out some of the shells that I've put in there. Well, I will bring you back after I have that ready to become an omelet. Only a few more left to go, so I'll bring you back. I seem to have improved my skill a bit. I'll say that now that I'm back on camera again. I'll screw up, but so far so good. I stopped once and took out a few small pieces of eggshell, but it's sort of a learning process, I guess. I have 8 female bob white quail, and I think the most eggs I've had in one day so far is 7, so they're probably all laying, Or at least I find 7. The little girls like to hide them in places where it's very hard for me to get them. But it's been fun. And if you read online about quail eggs and all of the health benefits that are claimed, this is a miracle food, I guess. Tastes good anyway, is all I can tell you. I brought out 21 eggs, and I think that's going to be about the equivalent of a, I don't know, yeah, I guess you can see that. It's going to be about the equivalent of a couple of good-sized hen's eggs, maybe 3 hen's eggs, I don't know, but that's what's going to go in my omelet anyway. We'll put that together in just a second here. You might have noticed some of the last of this year's tulips. Picked those a little while ago. There's quite a story behind the 2 yellow ones. I'm quite sure they are tulips that I bought when the Royal Canadian Legion celebrated their 50th anniversary. And I think that would have been sometime in the 70s, if not the early 80s. It was a long time ago anyway. Planted them sort of at the edge of a lawn, and for a number of years they bloomed, and then they stopped blooming and just sent up the leaves every year for many years, like I'm talking 20 years maybe. They sent up nothing but leaves. 3 years ago they started blooming again. There probably were a dozen bulbs when I started. First year that they bloomed again 3 years ago, there was, maybe 3 or 4 of them bloomed. There were more that bloomed last year, and this year there are a dozen of them. I've done nothing to them over the years, never put any fertilizer on them. I don't have any idea why all of a sudden, after 20 years of just sending up leaves, they started blooming again. The pink ones are some that I planted, well, much more recent than that, but probably 10 years ago, and they're doing well. Well, soon we'll be making the omelet. I'm going to put the asparagus in. The other vegetables are starting to get tender. Well, everything's coming along nicely. The asparagus has come to a slow boil anyway. And the eggs have been in the pan here for a minute or so. It's a non-stick pan with just butter in it. And all I do to get everything cooking is pull back the cooked part and put some of the raw egg in its place. Now, it isn't necessary to have all of the egg cooked on top. I like to have most of it, but once you add the herbs and then fold the omelet over into the plate, the heat that is sealed inside the omelet continues cooking the egg. Now to add the fine herbs here. I'll bring you back when it's time to plate this. Well, there's everything in the plate anyway. Quail's egg omelet with fine herbs. Some Jerusalem artichokes. I always get a kick out of the name because I've heard many people say it's not even remotely related to an artichoke, and it certainly has never been to Jerusalem. But anyway, it's the tuber from a native sunflower. And some asparagus and some spring onions. And this off to the side here, I guess I haven't shown before, that's a little salad made out of mustard greens. In this case, mustard reds, I guess. I can't remember the name of the variety, but the hoopos has got lots in there. Evidently it went to seed last year. So. And it makes a very good salad. Of quail egg omelet is delicious. I really like the quail eggs. I don't see any great difference in the flavor from a quail egg to a really fresh, free-range chicken egg. Supposedly all kinds of health benefits, and they are very tasty. And the first asparagus of the season. I eat almost as much asparagus raw in the garden as I do cooked. I can't resist it. It's always snapping off a spear and having it. It won't be much longer now, and I'll have to leave what's going there and let it continue to grow and turn into ferns, because if I don't, there won't be any asparagus next year. Well, I'll come back and talk about a few more things here in the cabin once I've finished lunch, and then I'll put some clips together of what's going on in the gardens and the hoop house and add it to this before I put this video up online. Well, lunch was very good. It's not good for the cook to brag about lunch. I didn't do much cooking, I guess, really, but all those fresh vegetables and the quail egg omelet was an excellent lunch. What I wanted to show you now is the solar power again, and the display there is like it's going crazy. It just keeps changing. That's the volts that it's reading, but it's a beautiful sunny day, but evidently, well, no, I'm looking out, I don't see a cloud in the sky, but for some reason the reading keeps changing. I have both lights on in here, and I do that quite frequently on a warm sunny day, just to have the battery depleted somewhat rather than just keeping to charge it. Matter of fact, occasionally I leave the lights on for 24 hours to run the battery down a bit. It's not good to just keep charging something and never using it. And the only thing that I have this hooked up to is the two lights in here, which are, as I say, they're on. Don't need them today. It's a bright sunny day, and there's lots of windows in the cabin here. But this is the inverter, and that is hooked up to a small fan down below this shelf. Well, I guess you can see a little bit of it if you see the green sticking out there, this little bit of green. Anyway, I don't use it very often, and I'll show you why. The inverter itself has a fan in it to keep it cooled down, and the fan makes a bit of noise, but with the two of them, it's quite noisy. So we wouldn't want to listen to that all the time, I guess. It does make that little fan go nicely, and if I'm in here on a hot summer day reading or whatever, I do run it. Keeps a nice breeze going. Well, I think what I will do is add some clips of the garden probably over the next several days to this video. And I hope you enjoyed this short segment in the cabin. I'm not staying overnight or anything, but I'm quite sure I will do that several times this summer. I enjoy camping out here on the hot summer nights, so I'm sure there will be another video or two before the summer is over. I've waited for early evening so the sun would go away a bit. The harsh sunlight makes photography a bit difficult. This is my Asian pear, grafted Asian pear with 4 varieties of pears on it. I think last year 3 of the grafts produced pears, small, not terribly large. I guess maybe they get larger as the tree gets larger. This year all 4 grafts have many clusters of blossoms, so I think I will let it go for a while and see how many of the pears it rejects itself and throws on the ground. But before they get too big, I'm sure I'll have to thin them again, because it's a young tree. A branch like this is very, very thin still, and that is one of the grafts. So I wouldn't want the weight of the pears to snap that off. You'd lose the graft. The hascaps are in bloom. I don't know if you can see that fellow or not. There's a big fat bumblebee. Another one behind me in another hascap bush. So I have hopes of being able to taste some hascaps in a few weeks' time. The blossom reminds me of some wild shrub here. Same type, sort of pendulous yellow blossom like that, but I know it's not a hascap. Whatever it is that's wild here doesn't produce any fruit. This is the third growing season for my small cherry trees. They're not supposed to become large trees anyway. They're more a shrub. It's called the Romance series, and for the life of me I can't remember the name of the other two. But this one I'm sure is called Juliet, and it's got a number of blossom buds on it. So hopefully I'll get to taste the cherries to see what they're like. The one in the middle here doesn't seem to have any blossoms. It's healthy, it's alive and growing. And the third one over here, I'm not surprised that it doesn't have any blossoms. It's grown magnificently. A year ago now, it was eaten right down to the ground, cut off by the wild rabbits, and all of that growth came back in 1 year, and it's now growing vigorously with side branching. I wouldn't be surprised but what it blooms for me next year. Looks like it's going to be a good year with the black currants. The bees are in them every day. Don't have any honeybees here. Nobody around here keeps honeybees, and a wild colony of them wouldn't survive our winters. It's very hard actually to overwinter a colony. Years ago I kept bees, and I don't think I ever successfully got any to come through the winter. We spend a lot of money on sugar and whatever feeding them, but they still die off in the wintertime. But I have 5 bushes of black currant, so looking forward to being able to make some more jam. I got all 4 of these beds cleaned out, and some new bags of soil and composted cow manure added. The 2 with the trellises have got blue potted peas planted, but they're not up yet. They've only been in a few days. And this is the bed here that I planted those few brassicas in from my winter sowing. You can see them at the back there and all. They have grown some, not a great deal. And I put 2 short rows in here, one of the white turnip and one of radishes, because they will both finish, hopefully be ready to eat before I have any other brassicas ready to go in the bed. My seedlings are just barely up and growing in the hoop house. So it'll be a few weeks yet before I transplant anything else into this area. This long bed has my Spanish onions in it. I had some left over, and I've planted a row of them next to where the potatoes are growing in the ground out there. And I've given some to friends. I'm just not growing as many as I used to, I guess. You see the 2 larger plants. That's white Russian kale, looking whiter than usual because I've dusted it with dye pelt. I have started to see the white cabbage moths around. Those 2 white Russian kale plants came through the winter, and so far they're not showing any signs of blooming, but I'm sure that's what they'll do, at which point I will just take them out. I'm not interested in actually, yes, I think down in there I can see a blossom head started. Any of that sort of thing, after, if it overwinters in the second year, for me anyway, it always tries to bloom. Spend the summer chasing it, trying to keep it from flowering and throwing its seeds everywhere. Last year I grew a few carrots, not very many, but I had the first time I ever had a problem with the maggots, carrot fly. And I said last year that what I would do this year is tent the area where I grow them with probably row cover or something like that. And then somebody mentioned and reminded me, I guess I had heard of it before, I've never done it, that supposedly if you plant them with onions or garlic or whatever, in the allium family anyway, the smell of the onions tricks the fly into going away because he doesn't smell carrots. Well, I'm going to see whether or not that works. And maybe I wouldn't have a problem anyway. I don't know. I had never had a problem with them before. But this has a row of white carrots going down the center. And I'll show you the bed next with my shallots in it. It has a row of carrots in it as well. These are shallots. On the right are French shallots. You can probably see 1 or 2 that have that reddish color to them, one down there, if it's in focus or not. And on the left, well, it had 2 names. I buy these from a company in Quebec, and I had never seen them offer this before. Maybe they did, and I just didn't notice, but they're calling it a multiplier shallot. Well, I think all shallots multiply, don't they? My French ones always do anyway. But they also call it a potato onion, which I'd never heard of before. But anyway, it appears to be white, and it's really, they're seem to be much more vigorous than the French ones right now. So we will see. They're supposed to be multiplying, so maybe they multiply more than the average one does or something. And there is a row of rainbow carrots down the center, just one of those envelopes, cheap envelopes of seeds that you find in the grocery store. It's a variety of colors of purple and orange and red and yellow and white, whatever, carrots. So something else to see whether or not we can trick those flies into going away. The potatoes that were planted in my no-dig bed here and covered with wood shavings, the race to the top has been won by the Linzer Delicatesse. Yeah, I see another one. No, I guess that's just dirt. I saw another one coming there. There are 3 of them up. You can see that one if it's too close to be in focus. One here, and the third one over here, which may or may not be showing. But so far they're up, and the ones that are up are a nice dark green, so that's encouraging. I haven't added any more shavings. I'm going to wait until they're 3 or 4 inches tall anyway, and then I will hill some shavings up around them, and then I'll cover the rest of the bed also with shavings. Well, let's talk plums. I don't know the name of any of these 3 trees here. This is the one that produced so well last year. A good crop for its first time ever of small purple plums, or medium-sized purple plums. Made a lot of very good jam with them anyway, and hoping to get some again this year. You may have seen that another bumblebee doing his work here. I pruned it. It doesn't recommend, I guess it's not recommended necessarily to prune. I'm not pruning it for better fruiting. I just don't see any sense in it going 12 or 15 feet tall, because whatever it produces up there close to the sky, I won't be able to harvest the fruit anyway. So I've pruned it off at about, 8 feet, 9 feet tall. I can reach with a step ladder anyway and get the fruit at that height. So that's the height that I plan to keep it at. Next to it, this is my bird table here. I don't feed the birds in the summer, but I don't take the bird tables down either. This is the thing that, if you might have heard me talk about it before, began life as an apricot tree. The apricot was winter killed, and this came up from whatever the apricot was grafted onto, and it turned out to be a small yellow plum. I did manage quite a few years ago to get it to produce a few small yellow plums, tasty, very small plums. So I don't know if it's, what the variety might be. Certainly nothing that would be very commercial. But last year it was a cloud of blossoms. This year it's got quite a few blossoms. Last year it did not produce a single piece of fruit, so I'm not holding out any hope for it this year either. And the thing over here, which has only got a few blossoms as well, and it's, believe it or not, it's looking better than it used to. I keep pruning the dead parts off the thing, shooting into the sunlight here, be able to see the flowers or not. They're high up. Probably not. There are some up there. I'm sure what you're getting is a lot of wind noise. It's breezing up as the sun goes lower here. This has a Japanese sounding name, and it is meant to be a pollinator. Well, I can't see how it does a very good job, because it has very few blossoms. But it is, the instructions that came with it said rarely it will produce fruit, but it's used for pollination. So maybe those few blossoms do help to cross-pollinate, but I think that thing that was an apricot at one time is what does most of the cross-pollinating on this tree here that I really like. Well, this has probably got this video going over a half hour, and I try to stay under a half hour if possible. So thank you very much for watching. I'll close this one down now.